Hi, it's Mary Ann. Welcome to Empowering LGBTQ Caregivers Stories of Love, Loss, and Triumph. This is a replay of our virtual panel discussion on LGBTQ caregiver concerns. Our panel includes our host, Sue Evans from Kensington Senior Living, as well as authors Laura Davis, Chris McClellan, Vincent Zappacosta, and Douglas Christensen. I'm here with my co-host, Christy Byrne Yates. We delve into the intricate and deeply personal world of caregiving within the LGBTQ community. You'll hear touching stories of love, resilience, and the unique challenges faced by these caregivers, from navigating healthcare and legal issues to creating accepting and loving environments. We also explore the importance of preparing essential documents to safeguard caregiving rights, the impact of caregiving on relationships, and the power of sharing personal stories to break through stigma. Join us as we provide invaluable insights, emotional support, and resources, all while celebrating the strength and love that underpin the caregiving experience. This is more than just a discussion. It's a community coming together to share, learn, and support one another through the trials and triumphs of caregiving. So get comfortable and let's dive into this touching and informative episode of Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Susan Evans, and I am honored to welcome you to today's webinar with Alzheimer's. Kensington Senior Living has 7 unique communities, 4 located in Virginia, Maryland, and New York, and 3 sister communities located in California. Kensington is truly privileged to support care partners and professionals from coast to coast. Kensington focuses on relationship-based care built on the foundation of our promise to love and care for your family as we do our own. That promise was what initially drew me to become a member of the Kensington family, as my father was a resident at Kensington for almost 8 years. Thank you, Kensington, for supporting and sponsoring educational webinars. Please join me in welcoming Christy, Mary Ann, Laura, Christopher, Vincent, and Douglas. I would love if you could share with our audience a little bit about yourselves. Christy, can we please start with you?
Sure. Hi, I'm delighted to be here again with you at this Kensington event. My name's Christy Byrne Yates. I'm an ALS author and I'm a co-host of the podcast Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia with Marianne Shuko, one of the founders, who you'll hear from in just a second. I wrote a book called Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation. Back in 2015, I lost both my parents to Alzheimer's. My mother had Alzheimer's. My dad actually had vascular dementia, and they died 7 weeks apart at the same time that I was raising kids. And so that's where the sandwich generation part came in. And so my book really focuses on that experience, but also sort of a call to arms like, hey, people, this might be happening for you sometime soon. So here's some things to think about and how to really also prepare yourself for doing all the things that you can now, whatever age you might be, so that your children have the information they need when you get older and might need some help. So that's sort of my hope.
And I must say, I have your book. It's really a resource manual, in my opinion, that I will look at for certain tips and things, because I don't think any of us thought that we would be a sandwich generation. And it's really like a peanut butter and jelly situation, because you really are torn between your own family, your children, and then your aging parents. And as we all know, our population is aging longer. And so I think we should all be prepared. But, you can literally take a pen and pad to Christy's book. So I recommend everybody take a look at that.
Oh, thank you.
Mary Ann, thank you for joining us.
Hello, hello. And thank you, Sue, for sponsoring this program. And thank you, Kensington, for hosting it. We're really happy to work with you again. I'm Mary Ann Shuko. I'm one of the founders of ALS Authors. We've been doing this for 9 years. We're the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. I wrote a little novel I published it in 2013 called Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story based on my experiences as a nurse. And had no idea that it would launch into this global organization of almost 400 authors all working to share stories. And we believe that storytelling is very important for the caregiving journey, and that's what we're all about tonight. You're going to hear a lot about that. And I just welcome you to visit our website at allsauthors.com.
I would encourage everyone to do that. There is beautiful novels. There is really how-to books. There is just, you can find anything you're looking for. The resource is really tremendous. And then Vincent and Douglas. And I'm so glad that we have three men on this webinar because it's not often. And Marianne, I know your Blue Hydrangeas is about a male caregiver, but it's not often that we really hear from the male caregivers. And so I'm super excited about that. So if you two could introduce yourselves, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Well, I'm Vincent. This is Douglas.
God bless.
And basically, we were caregivers for 13 years for my mom, and my background is in design, graphic design, yoga, and excuse me, and theater. And our book, Dementia Mama Drama, started as a blog, actually, as a tool for therapy, with Mama. So she was aware of it while it was all going on, and she loved it. She craves attention. She was a drama queen. That's how we kind of Dementia Mama Drama. But we focused on the positive rather than the negative because there's too much negative that's assimilated with Alzheimer's.
And we've tried to focus on the music and humor because those were the things that got her going, that kept her alive. That anything with music, it would change her mood like that. And so we focused on that. And
Well, so the blog was going
the
on,
blog.
and then one of our friends, after Mama had passed, shortly afterwards, one of our friends said, "You have to develop this into a play." So, of course, we did.
We did it at the Fringe Festival and worked on that. And now the next step for us is we're working on a treatment of written episodes for a series, but it's going to be mostly focusing on a gay couple in their caregiving journey, and not so much on the mama, but of course she's the main character.
Yeah, she's in it.
It would be about the caregiving.
And it's not specifically Alzheimer's. We want to encompass that there's many different types of caregivers out there. So that we wanted to bring that and how the extended family have their stories too. So like the people in nursing homes, the people in facilities, the doctors, they all become well, for us, they did. They're all going to have their little bits of stories, and it's going to make it grow and make it hopefully more rich. I'll shut up now.
I hope it's funny because
Yeah.
we all have challenges. And as we discussed when we were doing our run a show the other day, it's not like you write a paper in high school. When I grow up, I want to be a caregiver and I want to be challenged with this and that. And all of us are challenged with different aspects of it. But the humor, I think, is so important. And there is studies right now with the UCSF Department of Aging, with the NIH and NIA, National Institute of Aging, about the power of music in a dementia community or in a home with dementia or in an aging home. So I love that. You're spot on. Perfect time. Laura?
Sure.
Davis.
Yes, I'm a 7-time author and I am a writing teacher. I teach writing as a tool for healing and transformation all over the US and all over the world. And the last book I wrote, The Burning Light of Two Stars, was inspired by my relationship with my mother. I cared for her at the end of her life with dementia. But in the decades prior to that, we had been deeply estranged and had a very tumultuous, difficult relationship, very volatile. And we'd worked at reconciling, but really it only had worked because we lived 3,000 miles away from each other. But when she turned 80, she moved across the country to California, and I ended up caring for her for the next 7 years. And the book I wrote is really asks and answers the question, can you caretake a parent who betrayed you in the past? And that's the angle I took on this story, which was tumultuous, dramatic, and ultimately pretty redeeming.
I'm not sure everybody would say yes to that, but I'm looking
In
forward
my
to
case.
it. I've known Laura for a long time. Laura actually did a writing workshop for us And Laura does these writing workshops that I recommend everybody sign up for. It was emotional, it was heartfelt, it was healing. It was just a really nice exercise for the entire caregiver community. But I've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other day, and I don't know what my answer to that would be. And I'm glad I'm not challenged with that aspect of it. But it takes a powerful, very strong person to do that. And Christopher, who has the best lighting of any of us.
It's only because of the white beard. That's the reflection. But what an honor to be with this wonderful group. Goodness, thank you for sponsoring this, Susan. And I've been in the caregiving conversation since 2010, 2011, when my partner was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. So my caregiving experience is a little bit different in one sense, that I was not dealing with dementia. But as Vincent Douglas said earlier, caregiving really encompasses every type of health calamity. And it all comes back to what I feel is our story sharing. We were fortunate to have our story told in a 2015 Pulitzer Prize nominated story, In Sickness and Health, A Couple's Final Journey, which told our story through the lens of two dimensionally different people just trying to maneuver the healthcare system and the legal system before marriage equality became law. And we had some challenges as same-sex couples. Thankfully, being a social worker myself, I knew how to manage some of that. But what's different, though, when you're a professional on one side, yet it turns personal on another, you have a lot of different dynamics that you have to go through. And I've stayed in the caregiving conversation as an advocate because I feel it's so important for caregivers to be able to share their story and their experience as they feel comfortable, to help those who are coming after us, because everybody is going to have a turn at caregiving. And through this vast experience of developing the Whole Care Network and meeting folks like Marianne and Christy, who are podcasters on the network, it's kind of like your calling to be able to provide that information and referral so people can find that necessary information in the moment that they become a caregiver. Because I've never met anybody that's had caregiving on their bucket list of things to do in life. So
I don't remember 20 years ago the word caregiver.
it's not.
I mean, it's such it's kind of a new thing, and the definition, I'm still not sure if we've got that down pat yet. I think the definition is so vast. But share with the audience a little bit about Whole Care Network and how we would access that.
Well, the Whole Care Network is a mixture of podcasts, blogs, a university where people can go and access free courses and paid courses from anywhere from a emergency room physician to nurse practitioners to caregiving consultants who are sharing their story. But really, the emphasis on the Whole Care Network is the podcast. We're just about ready to go over 1 million downloads of our podcast, and thanks to Marianne and Christy, obviously. But it's been a labor of love, and it's been my way of giving back to the community. It's just getting a little bit too big for one person to handle. That's why, like in caregiving, you need a team. Well, at the Whole Care Network, I could certainly use a team.
We'll
So,
sign up.
okay, very good. I'll be
We
in.
can have a little humor in there with music.
We got a lot of humor.
Fun.
A lot of humor. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and then I will come back on to help a little bit with the Q&A that were submitted at registration, because I'd like to involve Christy and Marianne in that. But I look forward to hearing about your stories, and I will see you in a few. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So, we've been wanting to do this conversation for a very long time because we know how important it is, and the LGBTQ community is underserved. And we know that there are a lot of people out there who are caring for someone that they love, or a family member, or anyone, spouse, parent. So we put together this panel to address some of the concerns. And in the process of creating it, we discovered that there was a lot more to it than we even realized when we set out. Because I am not a member of that community, and neither is Christy. So we had to rely on our friends here to kind of open up our eyes and let us see what's going on. So Chris was my first person as a gay caregiver, and over the years we've talked a lot about some of the issues that he had encountered. So what I wanted to ask, and I guess we'll start with you, Chris, is what are the three top issues, and you can just say one if you want, that you believe the LGBTQ plus community faces in caregiving?
Oh, goodness. Just
Mm,
three? Just three?
three top.
Well, and I use this quotation. The funny thing about that, Marianne, is there are a lot of similarities that every caregiver faces. And I'm certainly not naive where I'm going to say that, the LGBT community doesn't have special needs. We do. But in essence, we all want to be able to care for our loved one without any drama, without any sidebars from professionals who may or may not fully understand our environment. So I think but you know, gay people from day one have known that the rules have always been different for them. And we go into these professional environments knowing that we're going to be cautious, yet we want to be able to get the help that we need. And I think really the important part for any LGBT caregiver is to be sure that you have trusted referrals. And those trusted referrals usually come from one caregiver to another. The other thing that is prevalent as it relates to aging and the LGBT community is isolation. That fear of who's going to find out about my secret, because everybody has their own coming out story. And those coming out stories impact how we interact with not only our friends and our family, but the professionals. And then I think the third thing, and I could go on for the whole hour, but I'll try not to, is when you're selecting a healthcare provider. If you're not comfortable enough to tell that healthcare provider what your orientation is, then you either need to have an advocate that can be there for you, or you need to go into a healthcare situation knowing that healthcare provider is friendly towards the community. It is essential that if we're interacting with somebody on a professional basis, that they're comfortable interacting with you.
Christopher, you say so many wonderful things in this piece, and in every conversation I've had with you. That's why I love talking with you. Um, I know not, we are all human, and there's a very human part of caregiving that is somewhat universal. But I appreciate you talking about how there are maybe some things that might be a little unique and can be difficult. I really do appreciate the whole piece around trust. I think one of the things that I think you and I have shared, and then other people I've talked to have shared with me is, um, like you said, having trust. And so maybe if you have an outside caregiver coming in to help you with some things, and
Mhm.
maybe they're not, you know, cool with this, they're like, they have a thing,
Mhm.
or a family member that might want to evangelize at the end of life. And,
Happens all
you
the
know,
time.
and so those kinds of issues can come up. And I think I just appreciate you sharing what you're sharing. I didn't know if Vincent and Douglas and Laura, if you wanted to weigh in on that, if there were some issues that you think are, either you've experienced yourself or from others that might be unique to the LGBTQ community.
I just want to say that I think it really depends where you live.
Yeah.
I live in Santa Cruz, California, and
Right.
in my experience, it was a complete non-issue. Like
Mhm.
I was out to everybody, probably most of the caregiving people or people in hospital. A lot of them were
Right.
in the same community, but certainly I never ran into a single problem with
Mm-hmm.
anyone but my mother.
Okay.
That had to do with my identity. So I
Mm,
think it really is where you've chosen to live or where you are
Right.
lucky enough to live.
sure.
Yeah, the same for
This
us. We
same
were New York City.
And like Marianne said, it's always about location, location, location. And we were fortunate enough, just because I'm a native New Yorker, in case you haven't told, but heard that by now. But we grew up. We had her in New York City, so there, it was more open. But like Christopher, we started back in the day before marriage was legal. Back in 2011 is when we started the blog and starting caring for her. Even before that.
Right.
So, but even at that time, and even being in New York City, we did come up with a few issues. I remember one in particular. I'll do this really quickly. Even though there outside the nursing home, there was a bench that a lot of the residents. My mother was out there. Someone went to Spring Falls. She just had to be outside and talk to the people and sing songs and what have you. And the aides knew us because we were still kind of new there, but they always saw us together, not thinking that we were necessarily together. I guess some of their mentality was not on that level. And one time, Douglas went to take my mother to bring her across the street. This is a really crazy story, but to meet Liza Minnelli, and they wouldn't allow. You got to name drop
He
once
was
in a
in the
while.
cafe on the corner and just like, go get my mother, Liza Minnelli. She's because she loved Liza Minnelli.
Yeah,
So I went
yeah.
to
So
get her.
this was like an opportunity for her to actually meet her, right? So I ran to get the camera, and they wouldn't allow him to take her. Well,
Who are you?
who are you? Well,
Yeah.
you
You're not family.
you just visit
You're not family,
sometimes.
right?
and
You don't belong. You cannot take. It was like,
The minute I heard that, I went off. Long story short, she did get to meet her, and it was a fabulous thing. And they never did that again. And then we did move to California, Northern California, not far from San Francisco, and it was suburbia. So that was slightly different, but we didn't feel different. I mean, I was always gay from day one, and I just was always myself. So people are either attracted to it, and if they have prejudice against it, they're gonna wind up liking me because I will make you like me. I mean, that's the way we are together. It's a perfect yin and yang. So we did come across some of those issues with the bias, but it
But-
wasn't
but again, nothing like.
location.
Yeah,
I mean, if we were in, I don't know, God knows where.
Arkansas.
I think the other component here is when we think about today's gay seniors, we have to put ourselves in their position. There was a 20-year difference between age difference between myself and my partner Richard, and he grew up in New York. So he came out of an era that was different from mine, and I think we often lose sight of what that meant for folks that were older than us. When you think about the three pillars in life that we always look to, our family, our community, and if you have a church, um, for those folks, and for a lot of us in the 60s and 70s, those pillars didn't support us. We were always looking for our family of choice, not and instead of our family of origin. And I think folks who are not connected or understand really the LGBT community like us that are in it lose that sight. And there's some folks in the LGBT community, especially, I'm just going to age drop here, some of the younger ones who forget that the Trailblazers, the Stonewall group who blazed the trail for folks like ourselves to where Will and Grace could be on TV, where they could have those positive images of folks that are just like them, that most today's gay seniors never had.
Yeah. And so some of you, it sounds, I'm just so, I love it. I love it that Laura, Vincent, Douglas, you guys that you have lived a life well loved from people that are in your life, and I know, Laura, you said other than with your mother, right? So I know that's not true for everyone who's in the LGBT community. And I know right now in our country, there's a chilling at times. And so
Yeah.
I think that's why we felt really compelled to sort of open this and talk about it. So I know maybe you can't speak from experience personally all the time on this, but just maybe thinking about what are some things that you would want people to know about. Like, I think about people who maybe are caring for a parent who doesn't maybe accept them or always had issues with them, or vice versa. There could be other things. It could be, I don't know, just different ways there may be friction or something. And so maybe lessons learned from in your own life or from others, what would you want listeners to know, and how to, like Christopher, you talked about getting an advocate, and like where might people find that, and what would you want in an advocate?
Well, I'm just going to lay it right on the line here. Um, the only way to combat someone's personal bigotry is to have your legal documents in order. That's the marriage license is one thing,
Right.
but there are so many people both on either side of the fence who don't have their legal documents in order.
And
Uh,
do you mean like power of attorney
Power of
or
attorney, healthcare
healthcare
proxy,
proxies?
all
Right.
those things
Right.
that give the caregiver the legal authority over who's ever entrusted in their care. And then I think in the process, you learn that there's a time to advocate for your, I'll use the generic term, care partner, your loved one. And then there's a time to debate
Mhm.
about the services that you've received from a provider. But I think again, it really all comes back, and I think it was Laura who said it earlier. W- it's where you live. There's different parts of the country where we're gonna feel more comfortable um, than there's parts of the country I wouldn't want to live in. But when we have those documents in order, and those are some of the tough conversations that people have to have with their care partners that are often left unsaid. And that's some of the similarities in care that we lose sight of.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say everybody needs to get those.
Well,
Like, that's just
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
important.
I just redid all of I redid
Yeah,
all of that in the last 6 months, and it felt so satifying, after
Yeah.
putting it off and putting it off
putting it
and
off.
putting it off,
In your
to
purple
actually start
folder?
yeah,
Yeah.
right, to start
Yeah.
doing it just felt fantastic, to
Yeah.
know that, and my kids are not gonna be left with a giant mess either of my
Mm.
stuff or my affairs or my not knowing my passwords. I mean, on every level, it felt
Yes.
really good
So
to take
important.
care of that, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, to your point, Laura, that's like a point that I make in my book so strongly, is like that was the gift my parents gave me, is that they did have everything prepared for me. They'd done that long before, and thank God they did, because by the time I was really involved in their care, they were not able to make those decisions, right? So we don't know when an accident's going to happen, a disease process starts.
Right.
It was great. So my husband and I looked at each other and said, we need to do this for our kids right now. Like, let's not wait. This is crazy. We don't know. You never know. So I'm so glad to hear you saying that too, because it's important for everyone. It is definitely a universal thing, I think. But anyway, I didn't want to, Vincent, Douglas,
I
if you have anything.
I carried all of our important documents in a green folder wherever we went, and there was numerous times where I had to pull that information out of the folder.
Mhm.
And what's different for heterosexual couples unmarried heterosexual couples is they would never get that question. They
Yeah.
would never get that question. Oh, what's your legal rights to this person? And Vince, I had the same thing that happened to me in the emergency room when the doctors are hovering over Richard, and I just said, "Excuse me, I might be able to help you out here." And they looked at me and said, "Well, who are you?" I thought, well,
Yeah.
I just got my little green folder out and said, well,
Mm.
I'm his I'm his life partner and his caregiver. I think I have some information you might want to. And those are the nuances that we go through, that we
Mhm.
know, that we have to put up with.
I mean, the other thing, going back to what we were saying before, being a caregiver is not on anyone's list for sure. And I mean, we never had kids or pets, nothing like that. So to be put in that position, it was a choice, of course. But what I always did is that's when I guess I learned empathy, which is like the biggest thing that I could say to people, to put yourself in their position. So I would always say, we have no one that's going to do this.
Who's going to take
Who's
care of us?
who's going to take care of us? So
Exactly.
I guess
kids, no
maybe it was like
family.
a selfish thing because I'm thinking what's going to happen to us, but I'm just like, who's going to do this for her if I don't do it? And then thankfully Douglas jumped on board and was, because getting together as caregivers as a couple, gay, straight, whatever, it breaks apart a lot of couples, and it brought us stronger together.
Well, her diagnosis happened when we were together for probably 5 or so years. And then it really was a turning point. And it's like, there's nobody else. He's got to do it. And I'm here with you. I love you. I love her. And we're going to make this work. And we had to do it. So we did it, and it made our relationship stronger, I think,
Yeah.
by that whole experience.
And she loves him more than me anyway. So
I wanted to jump in on that because I've been with my wife for a really long time. And we have 3 kids together, and been together for a long time when my mother moved out here. And Karen played such an important role in caregiving her. I mean, she planted this incredible garden for her. She showed up whenever it was needed. She showed up in emergencies. She always treated my mother with kindness that I wasn't always able to access because
Mhm.
she didn't have a difficult history with my mother. At one point, she and I took my mother all the way from California to Florida to see her last surviving sister. And her dementia was so advanced, it was absolutely not a journey that could have been made without 2 caregivers with her
Yeah.
on the airplane. But really, the most important thing Karen did is that she confronted me about the way I was always looking for the worst in my relationship with my mother. I was always accentuating her flaws and her failings and minimizing her good qualities. And
Huh.
Karen, because of our history, because we'd had this long, difficult history for decades, and Karen confronted me about that, and I had to really face the fact that she was right. So it wasn't just that she helped, she was a truth teller,
Oh,
and I really
beautiful.
appreciate that.
Mm.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think caregiving can be hard on couples, and so
Oh, for
I
sure.
love hearing this. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, absolutely. And so having a partner who rises to the challenge is really
And Laura, we did the same thing when we had to move from New York to California. That we took my mom with us, and without the two of us,
It was the first time she'd ever been on an airplane.
so
Oh
she
my god.
so the entire crew got they got first class entertainment. We were singing and not dancing. We were singing the whole time. She was eating, so she was happy. She had lasagna and ice cream sundaes. She was, but we
Distract and
just
divert.
yeah. So whenever she would do something, it's like, no. Oh, why don't you sing this song? I'll put the earbuds in, and then she'd curse the earbuds because they came out of her ear. So it was hysterical, but it was exhausting
Yeah.
to do. But
I mean, for you too, that's Florida. That's all the way across country. That's
Yeah.
a
It
long
was, it was
flight.
one of the most miserable
It
flights
was.
I've ever had,
Yeah.
to be honest. There was nothing funny about it.
I feel like
She didn't understand that you have to stay in your seat. So it was very
Mhm,
difficult.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm.
Well, she kept my mother and I curse a lot. So the way your relationship is different. My mother and I are very honest and like, well, always honest and like very I wouldn't take no for an answer, even like at the end, because I still held on to the relationship we had. And he would always be like, why don't you shut up and go talk to the nurses, you know?
Well, we played those roles. I mean, because they had a very combative relationship, and that was
But in a good
in
way.
a good way.
It was honest. Like if she
I mean,
did,
Italian, whatever.
what did you eat for dinner? I didn't have dinner. So why do you have spaghetti sauce on your blouse? You're not supposed we did a lot of things you're not supposed to do, but for us it worked.
Yeah, yeah. I know we have several authors, and I would love to, Marianne, I don't know if you have some other questions to go for, but I think we would love to hear some pieces from your works. Any-
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll read something. The Burning Light of Two Stars takes place after my mother's moved across the country so I could take care of her for the rest of her life. And in this scene, she's 81. She's in the early stages of dementia, and I would say I'm going through the motions of being a good daughter, but my heart is still really hardened against her. And as this scene starts, I've just visited her, and she's confronted me about this underlying coldness I have. 3 decades earlier, I had erected an impenetrable wall between us, a fortress with narrow slits so I could watch her approach. I ensured that my defenses were prepared any time she came near me. I always had an escape plan. It's true, we later reconciled, and the fact that we were able to create a functional relationship was a miracle. But it wasn't an intimate miracle because I never took down my wall. Oh, I taught myself to be kind to her in a fake it till you make it kind of way, but I still held her at bay. My wall just got subtler. It wasn't permeable. It was hard and opaque, and there was no door. We only met in the antechamber, the common room where guests are received. Only my polished self was on display, my masked self, and only in the antechamber. Mom never saw my inner sanctum, and I never saw hers. I got as close as I could within the constraints I had established, but closed is closed, and a closed heart is a lonely one. The price I paid to keep my mother out, at first with withdrawal, later with an armed fortress, and finally with the polite rules of détente, was love. The pure, unfettered love I longed for, the pure, unfettered love she craved. That day in the kitchen when I couldn't comfort her, I had to face it. My mother was still a stranger to me, with tentacles of need I was loath to touch. I wanted to be more than kind, to do more than merely what was right. I wanted to love my mother, just once, freely and with the relief of a lost, exhausted child, beyond words and beyond all pretense. I wanted to lay my head on a place that was safe, just once, before it was too late.
Oh, wow.
Goodness
So
gracious, Saint
lovely.
Ignatius. That was like off the charts.
Gorgeous.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. Anyone else?
So,
Oh, I got something that'll change the tone if you want to do that. I mean, I'm going to bring up the room a little bit now because that was heartbreaking. Yeah, and it's short. Because we wrote everything really short so that caregivers could read it and put it down. And I need my goggles here. So
Is
this
one of the daily doses?
it's one of our daily doses because that's how we wrote the book, and it's called "Money. I Have Some Money." So during a visit with Mama one night, we were cleaning out her purse. We did this often because she would wrap and save food she didn't finish at mealtime to keep for later. Her purse was always full of stuff. We even found her TV remote in there. She tried to help by pulling out her leopard coin purse. She took out a dollar bill, looked at it, and then put it back in. She did this repeatedly as we continued to clean out her purse. So then we started to talk about money. So it's me now. Vin, why haven't you ever saved any money? Mama. Vincent, your father was a gambler. That son of a bitch, may he rest in peace. He ran the numbers. He was a bookie. Don't you remember taking the numbers on the phone for him on Saturday mornings? He slept late after playing cards all night, and I wouldn't take the numbers. We never could save a damn dime. Well, why didn't you try to save some money on your own? Money? I have money. You do? Sure. I have a couple of hundred in my bank account. When I drop dead, you'll have a couple of hundred. Douglas and I started laughing, which made Mama start laughing. We knew she didn't have a bank account for many years. I gave her $2 more to put in her coin purse. What's this for? That's for making us laugh. She looked at us and gave us a big smile. I should make you laugh more often. It was a good night and definitely worth the $2.
I
Yeah.
love that story.
Gorgeous.
Oh, goodness.
Mm.
I'd like to just share two quick stories from my book because the book was part memoir, part how to. And what I learned along the way, my caregiving experience was I was Richard's co-pilot. I wasn't I wasn't taking the medicine. I wasn't taking the radiation. I was his co-pilot following his lead. And there's two very funny yet beautiful stories that are in the book. One was when the nurse, remember, Marianne, you're the nurse here, so put yourself in this role. When the nurse came to the house as we were going on hospice, and she dutifully had her list of things she was going through, and she said, "Now, Mr. Schiffer, these are the things that you should be eating and should not be eating." And she just went, and he just stopped her in his New York bro, and he said, "Look, lady, I'm between 82 and death. I'm going to eat whatever I want to eat." And she just stopped, like, and like, you know what, Mr. Schiffer, you are exactly right. And then the other thing I want to share, and it's a topic that is not often talked about, toileting. It's one of the hardest things for anybody to have to do in caregiving. And I can't imagine what it would be like having to do it for a parent. Richard was 5'4", very independent, and could not ask for help. The last 6-8 weeks of his life, he needed to ask for help. Sometimes he can get out of the chair on his own. Sometimes he wouldn't, but we had a code word that we came up with. Pooperama. He would look at me, I would look at him, and I'd have that look. He said, "You know what? He'd say, it's time for a pooperama." So sometimes he'd get out of the chair on his own. Sometimes he needed help. I let him dictate what he needed. Sometimes he needed the walker. Sometimes he didn't. We maneuver down the hallway. We'd be talking about a variety of things. And there's no more vulnerable time for two people in those types of situations. But I could tell you, he's sitting, and I'm just, he's sitting there doing his business, and I'm standing at the door. I miss those. Those are the most meaningful conversations that two people could ever have. We talked about our life together. We talked about where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do, where we wanted to travel. And we talked about what my life would be like without him.
Oh,
And from that experience, when that day came, and it comes for every caregiver, when that day came, I was able to go back to those conversations. I knew it when he made his life transition. He got everything that he asked for. I didn't have to second guess any of my decisions. And if I could give every caregiver that gift, that's why I stay as an advocate, so that they can have that peace when life transitions like I did. Doesn't mean I miss him any less. I would like to have him, but I had peace because he got exactly what he wanted at his life transitioned because of our stories.
no.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Chris, can we talk about stories? Because you're like the story man, and everybody here has shared their story. And All's Authors is all about sharing our stories, our caregiving stories, and often these are very personal,
Right.
and people reluctant to say anything if their loved one, especially when it's dementia. There's a lot of
Right.
stigma attached to being gay. Can we just
Right.
talk about
And
the stories?
I just, it's just as developed for me through the years. It's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. And again, we were fortunate to have our story told. And our story is no different than anybody else's. It's just was publicized in the newspaper. And the reason our story was so successful was because people could relate. to dealing with the healthcare system, dealing with the legal system, dealing with all those things in the midst of losing the person that you love. Because there's one thing I've learned in the last 15 years when it comes to caregiving and caregivers, there are no strangers and there are no boundaries when it impacts everybody. And it's our stories that bring us together. And that's why it's such an honor to be a part of this community.
Uh, I'm at a loss for words in the moment, but I'll get my voice back. That everything, all three of your authors and Marian and Christy have added so much into this. But I have a question for everyone. Your story, Christopher, is so heartfelt that in order to have this transition and to be able to feel so good with the transition, does anyone have any advice about when that person has dementia, about how to navigate that road? Do you have any thoughts on that, Christopher?
Um, the journey's going to be different for everybody. And, there's two very common aspects to caregiving that nobody is prepared for. There's a beginning and then there's an ending. And I think the commonality there is having I'm just going to say courage to reach out to your trusted friend, family member, that person that you can rely on, that is going to allow you to have that cry when you need to cry. That's going to allow you to bang on the wall when you need to bang on the wall, or just allow you to sit by yourself and deal with it. Because I hate to be cliche-ish, but that old cliche is true. Time does heal all wounds, but wounds heal in their own time. And in your time, it does get better. But in order for that to happen, you've got to surround yourself with people that are supportive and are understanding. And that's why, like what Marianne does, what Christy does, what Laura does, what Vincent and Douglas do, that's why we need to get these resources out to people so that they can find that comfort in their own way.
There's one other thing, which is in terms of feeling at peace at the end, is that you have to really show up. Like I in my book, there's a lot about how my brother shirked, and didn't show up and expected the daughter to, do most everything. And I really resented him. He would show up when it was convenient for him. And after our mother died, I remember having a conversation with him and he just said, I really envy you because he said, I know how much I missed out on because I was selfish.
Oh,
So,
mm,
that
Oh,
was it was really powerful to have that conversation. In fact, we had it while my mother was being cremated. We watched her cremation and
Mm.
we had this like kind of amazing conversation while her body was burning. And that was one of the things we talked about. We're very honest with each other. So I feel like I was there. I showed up and I had some really difficult moments. I lost it on a few occasions. I was not an ideal, perfect caregiver, but I was there. And I was there and watched and participated in every aspect of my mother's life and her death. And I think I felt at peace. When you're dealing with someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, you're grieving over a long period of time. You don't just say goodbye to them when they die. You're saying goodbye to aspects of them all the way along.
right.
And sometimes that's really painful. And sometimes it was really funny. Like my mother, when I came out to her as a lesbian when I was 23 years old, she said, "You've confirmed my worst fear about you." That's sort of where she started. And then over maybe 5 or 6 years, she started, coming around. But she still was like, didn't tell her friends and never introduced Karen as my partner. And when she had dementia, Karen would come to visit. She goes, "This is my daughter-in-law," and then
huh.
she would say to me, oh, like 100 times, she said, "You and Karen have done such a great job with those kids. Who says lesbians shouldn't have children?" So it was like watching
Huh.
her transform was really funny, and I think there's always in the midst of the tragic moments, there are ones that are really funny, and
Oh,
I never
okay.
got tired of her saying that to me.
Yeah. Chris,
Wow.
Well, we all know that Vincent and Douglas are funny. So how is that? But how is that with you? I mean, Lori just said her mother was not accepting. Was your mother accepting, Vincent?
Um, Definitely. I'm pretty much from day one. Uh, I was never really closeted, so I was always out there. I mean, I remember uh, as a kid, she would always encourage me, like, "You're going to be a singer and you're going to be a dancer." Because meanwhile, my father wanted me to be a ball player, of course. Italian family. This is you do this, and but she's like, You're singing, you're dancing, then
And all the Judy Garland records.
all the Judy Garland records, and then of course I'd start singing them at 5 years old. So she kind of had an inkling, you know. But the great thing about both my parents, actually, but my mother more so, from that time frame, that they were so accepting of not necessarily just of gay, but of anyone. I mean, I still hear from kids that I grew up with in grade school that knew my parents and knew my mother, and when they got to see the book, they said, "I remember your mother. She was so great. She was always like the best." And it's like she was all encompassing with love. So there was,
Everybody from the neighborhood would always come there. This was the place where everybody could come and be themselves, and there was no
yeah,
judgment, you know.
yeah. There was only one time, but that's with my father that he asked about. Well, why don't you have a girlfriend? And I think I was 16 or 17. And I said, well, some of us don't, so I prefer you not ask me again. I'm surprised you didn't give me a smack across the mouth because that's what you did back then, you know? Um, so no, they were
But there
always,
was never an issue, and there was never an issue for her with us as a couple. I mean,
she loved him all the time. If he
yeah.
wasn't there, was rare, where's Douglas tonight? I see you all the time. How come he's not here? It's like, okay, okay.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could wave a magic wand and the entire world would be as welcoming as your mother?
Mm, yeah.
We're running out of time, but Marianne, Christy, I'd love to share some final thoughts. I just looked through all the questions, and I think we got through most of the questions because one of Laura's questions was, "What role did your wife play in caring for your mother?" And we know that she was the truth sayer.
Yes.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. But Marianne, Christy, do you have any last thoughts, or does anyone have any closing thoughts?
I don't. I'm so grateful. You're all just it's just fun to get to know you all a little bit better. And how lucky are we to have such wonderful people involved in our Al's Authors family. So what a great resource that you all provide just as caregivers for dementia, and Christopher giving Al's Authors a platform, and what you do for all kinds of caregivers and all of that. It really is a gift. And so for our listeners, I'd say for sure check out Al's Authors and Whole Care Network. But loving hearing your stories.
I have one
And
other thing to say, which is that, because I'm representing someone who had a difficult relationship, is that my mother changed so much with dementia and Alzheimer's, and that I would walk into her room at the end of her life and she would just beam as if the sun had come out. And you are the best daughter in the whole world. And I had craved those words my whole life, and I just got bathed in them every time I saw her, but she wasn't the same mother anymore. So it was a very kind of
Yeah.
bittersweet, like, in a way, I missed the old feisty,
Mhm.
difficult woman, because who was this new mother I had?
Yes, yeah.
And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the things that happens when we are caregivers, is that the person changes, and sometimes they change in a way that's completely unexpected.
Yeah.
Uh,
The per the person changes and we change too.
We
I
change
mean I
too.
mean, that's how
So
I found myself. I feel like I'm a much not vastly different, but there are changes. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. So go ahead, Vincent.
Awesome. Just like a final thought, what we would do, because back then there weren't all these caregiver groups and support groups and Alzheimer's. I mean, there wasn't much around. So we went with our feelings. And a lot of times when we would visit, it was like, this is like not my number one place I want to go because of, not because of my mom, but because of the environment and all the sad faces. So I felt like it was my job to like kind of talk to everybody or smile and like "Hey, how you doing today?" And like that's all they needed, you know. So
We always involved everybody else.
yeah, and she would get
Right.
really jealous
Yeah,
about
and she'd
that
be
one.
jealous.
Just before we would go in, if it was a bad night or we just weren't in the right headset, we would like look at each other, hold our hands, breathe in deep, breathe out. I bring my yoga training back into it. And let's just go in here. She's the star. We're making her the star. We'll go with how she's feeling. And if she's feeling crappy, we're going to make her laugh and she'll start singing. So just know your loved one's happy place, you know? That's it.
That's beautiful.
I love that.
You're going to have to come visit Kensington.
Okay.
I would love that. We have actually music every day at 4:00. So
I can
at
sing.
4:00, we will dance, we will sing, we can do karaoke, we'll do the whole thing.
Great.
Leanne, did you have a closing thought?
Yes, I want to thank everyone here for sharing stories and knowledge and experience. And I want to let everyone know that you can learn more about all of these authors at allsauthors.com. They've all appeared on our podcast. So you can dive deeper into their personal stories. And they've all written a blog post for us. And you can find information about their books and where to buy the books and their social media and all of that stuff at allsauthors.com. We are in the midst of publishing a new anthology called Poetry for the Dementia Journey.
And I will encourage everyone to share this webinar with friends and family. I mean, I really don't care who you are. This is such a brilliant panel group or presenters because you all have such different stories, yet you all came to the same conclusion and all have very helpful tips and advice. So thank you to the audience. Thank you to All's Authors. Share this webinar. This webinar will also live on all Kensington websites and our YouTube. So please encourage people to watch it. And thank you and have a really safe evening or afternoon wherever you are in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
everyone.
Hi, it's Mary Ann with exciting news. All's Authors has published a brand new anthology, Poetry for the Dementia Journey, now available in ebook and paperback through Amazon. Within its pages, you'll discover a variety of voices writing about the diversity of dementia care experiences, caring for a mother or father or spouse, witnessing the decline of a sibling, reflections on the time before the diagnosis, the years of care, and the aftermath. Poetry provides us with a meaningful way to explore our experience and emotions regarding dementia and to express ourselves when we encounter the many different joys and dilemmas caregiving can bring. You'll find details on how to order the book in the show notes. Please remember to leave a review on the book sales page once you've read it. Reviews do help boost a book's visibility and helps readers find it. Thank you for your support of our efforts to erase the silence and stigma that often accompany a dementia diagnosis.